Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Lexa Peterson, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major James Kurz. This evening, we warmly welcome the family of Lieutenant Charles Kemp Teasdale, whose story will be told shortly. We are honoured to acknowledge Mr. Marcin Karolski, Charge d'Affaires, Embassy of Poland, and Mr. Mark Lax, Vice Chairman of Legacy Australia, and their accompanying delegations. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching this broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed at the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament. Flowers of the forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant Charles Kemp Teasdale. Charles Teasdale was born on the 19th of May 1918 at Barcaldine in Queensland. He was the youngest of 5 children born to Herbert Oxley Teasdale and his wife Mary. The family remained living in Barcaldine throughout Charles' childhood. He attended the local school for his education, and after finishing his schooling, found work as a shearer and a labourer in the forestry industry. Charles joined the Citizen Military Force at Clermont on the 21st of May 1941 and was allotted to A Company of the 26th Battalion. Charles began training with the battalion, initially at Kissing Point near Townsville and finally at Selheim near Charters Towers from June 1941. In the first months of his service with the CMF, Charles was promoted twice, first to acting corporal in late August and then to corporal in November. During this period, Charles was also called up for full-time service with the 26th Battalion. In February 1942, Charles ran into trouble with military authorities when he was reprimanded after going absent without leave overnight. A few weeks later, he was released from full-time duty and discharged in preparation for his move to the 2nd Australian Imperial Force. Charles spent the next few months at Guerrilla Warfare School before enlisting on the 16th of April 1942 in Brisbane. Initially allotted to the 7th Training Battalion, he was appointed acting lieutenant within the infantry reinforcements and joined the infantry school for further training. While on training duties in Australia, Charles was wounded on duty when a bomb exploded during a fighting exercise, causing multiple small puncture wounds over his buttocks and the back of his thighs. A subsequent court of inquiry found that Charles had not been responsible for the accident, and he spent the next fortnight recovering at the 22nd Australian General Hospital. Charles remained training with the infantry reinforcements until June 1943, when he was transferred to the 2nd 7th Australian Cavalry Commando Squadron and left Australia for New Guinea on the 31st of July 1943. Once in New Guinea, Charles was allotted to the 2nd 6th Commando Squadron on regimental duties and embarked for Port Moresby in early August. Charles was appointed acting sergeant and quartermaster of the regiment in early September, around the same time the commandos were flown to Luron in the Markham Valley. There, they were to support the 7th Division in its coming Ramu-Markham Valley campaign. The 2nd 6th Commandos provided flank protection for the division, carrying out reconnaissance and long-range patrols and capturing and holding ground from the Japanese if necessary. The Australian 7th and 9th Divisions liberated the administrative centre at Lae on the 16th of September, and from there looked towards recapturing the entire Huon Peninsula. The 2nd 6th Commandos were heavily involved in the fighting at Kaipat on the 19th and 20th of September, where they captured the village and then repelled a large Japanese counterattack. With the seizure of Kaipat in September, the 7th Division and its supports were ordered to contain the Japanese in the mountains and prevent them from returning to the area around the Markham and Ramu River valleys. The combined valleys were recognised as being vital to the newly captured Lae area security. The valleys, hemmed in to the north and south by towering mountains, formed a flat corridor which provides an excellent avenue of approach to Lae and sites for landing grounds for aircraft. Charles was briefly evacuated to the 2nd 4th Field Ambulance in early November with malaria, but had soon recovered and returned to his squadron, where he was promoted to lieutenant and given the role of section leader. By early December, the 7th Division was preparing to attack Japanese defences on Shaggy Ridge, a dominating razor-backed feature on the landscape. The 2nd 6th Commandos were based around Mane and Kesawea, undertaking patrols and keeping the area clear alongside members of the Papuan Infantry Battalion. They frequently came into contact with Japanese parties and experienced frequent attacks. During a Japanese attack on Isurea on the 9th of December, the different parties of the squadron were separated. Although Charles was reported to have withdrawn his party from their position, over the next few hours, no communications were able to reach him. As the commandos withdrew from Isurea that evening, Charles' patrol failed to return. They were still reported as missing on the morning of the 10th, though other members of the squadron expressed hope that they formed some of the 50 Australian troops identified in the vicinity of Coburn. In the afternoon of the 11th of December, 2 soldiers from Charles' party made their way back to the rest of the squadron. They reported that the patrol had been ambushed and that Charles had been wounded in the thigh and was being carried back to camp by 4 Papuan and New Guinean carriers. On the 13th, the squadron received the news that Lieutenant Charles Teasdale had died of his wounds while being carried back to camp on the 12th of December 1943. He was 25 years old. Reporting on his death, the war diary of the 2nd 6th Commando Squadron read, "The squadron thus loses a very signed section leader and man." Once news of Charles' death reached Australia, tributes from family and friends poured into the local newspapers. His loved ones continued to insert poems and commemorative notices in the years following his death. One poem, inserted by his parents and siblings, read, "You know of no returning to the land you died to save, and the loved ones who are waiting in the home of your boyhood days." Charles' body was initially buried at Dampu War Cemetery, but was exhumed and reinterred at the Leigh War Cemetery in 1944. After the war, a Commonwealth War Graves headstone was erected over his grave, bearing the personal inscription selected by his grieving family back in Australia. He died that others may live in peace, loved by all, sadly missed. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant Charles Kemp Teasdale, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall not grow old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post-ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.